Story 1. I was a poor child, and I had received new crayons for the start of the school year. It was second grade. For some reason, there was a girl in class who disliked me. She broke all of my new crayons. I was devastated. This was 45 years ago. Beth, you are still unpleasant. Story 2. In third grade, we did a week on sea creatures. We watched a video about octopuses. Later that day, we had to fill in facts on a cartoon octopus and color it in. I started coloring mine red. The teacher came along and yelled at me that I was doing it wrong and I was stupid because there's no such thing as a red octopus. I reasoned that we had just learned octopuses can change color for camouflage on coral reefs. Since there are red corals, it stands to reason that they could be red. I was so upset that I went home that afternoon and spent the evening in my parents' office on dial-up internet gathering all the information on red octopuses I could find. I even found one from the Mediterranean that is naturally red. I printed it all out in color and took it to school the next day. I walked to school at 7 a.m. The school didn't start until 9 a.m. The principal was the first to arrive and found me waiting in the parking lot with my folder of facts. My plan was to confront my teacher directly. Luckily, the principal found me first, calmed me down, and later I received a special award at assembly for research. The principal made my teacher give it to me in front of the whole school. Vindication. I'm 37 now, and I'm pretty sure that teacher is no longer alive. I can't even remember her name, but I hope she faces consequences for her actions. Story 3. Devin Smith told me in fourth grade that my drawing of a grasshopper was too good and told the class and teacher that I copied it from the book. It was not even the same size as the one in the book. He is probably a fine person these days, but to me, he will always be someone who could not draw a good grasshopper to save his life. Sorry, your grasshopper was not good. Devin. Story 4. My cousin once ate the marshmallows out of my Lucky Charms cereal and then put the cereal back as if nothing happened. That was in 2007. I will never forget. I will never forgive. Story 5. I was published in a state literary journal in 2013. My friend said it was not a big deal. She said, "It is not like it is the Paris Review. She is dead to me." Story 6. My mom made me let my cousin use my roller skates first on my birthday. It was the present I had just opened. Story 7. It was during netball practice in the 5th grade. This girl told her mother, the netball coach, that I called her a bitch. I got in trouble and cried all the way home, even though I certainly did not call her that. I'll call you a bitch now, though, Catherine. Bitch. Story 8. When I was about 8, one of my friends had a birthday party at Build-A-Bear Workshop. Their mom set a limit of $14 for each kid to get a stuffed animal and maybe a bow or a pair of sunglasses for their animal. I was smart and chose the cheapest option for a stuffed animal so I would have a few dollars left to get a shirt for my bear. The birthday girl's mom told me that I was the only kid who could afford a shirt because I was the only one who chose the cheapest bear. She did not want the other kids having a meltdown because I got clothes for my bear and they did not. She told me I could get glasses or a hat for my bear, but not a shirt. I would still have money left if I did that. She even told the workers not to let me get the shirt, and to take it from me if they saw me with a shirt for my bear. I knew it was wrong, but I did not want to cause a scene and ruin my friend's birthday, so I just got a pair of glasses for my bear. When my grandpa picked me up, he saw I was sad, so he asked what was wrong. When I told him, he told me to go get the shirt I wanted, and he would pay for it. We at least had the sense to wait until the other guests had left. But that really upset me. Story 9. When I was old enough to be expected to bring my own dish to family potlucks, I intended to bring a Caesar salad, but my mother insisted that I bring all the ingredients separately because not everyone likes every part. I was annoyed but complied. After I set out the ingredients at the gathering, I came back into the kitchen to find my uncle assembling it, which was fine since that was what I wanted anyway. However, he also added the extra berries from his sweet salad, ruining the entire dish. I ended up being the only one who ate from it and made sure to pick out all the berries from my portion. I am not sure if I am more annoyed at my mother or my uncle. Story 10. When I was around 4 or 5 years old, my younger brother chewed the hand of my Barbie doll flat. I needed that hand to hold her purse. Damn it. Story 11. When my mother said, "Well, you are really hard to live with," after I told her my ex-husband and I were divorcing after 20 years, she apologized later when the abuse came to light. However, it will never be the same between us again. She had not lived with me for more than 20 years. Maybe I am not the moody 17-year-old I was when I left home. Maybe I was just a normal teenager and not actually difficult to live with. Perhaps there are some things you should think but not say. What was my mother thinking? Story 12. My friend and I were drunk, joking around on a flat roof. I turned my back for 1 second, and he shoved me because he thought it would be funny. I broke my ankle, needed surgery, and missed school. He said, "It was not that serious." He never really apologized and just laughed it off. So, I do not hold a grudge, but I do not trust him anymore, and I never will. Story 13. My dad got mad at me for not wanting to have a party to celebrate my high school graduation when the year before I did. He told me to my face that he did not think I was going to make it. This was 5 years ago. Story 14. My brother ate the last Skittle out of the bag I had saved and was eating during family television time. He said it was meant for him because his name began with an S and that Skittle had an S on it. It is decades later and I am still bitter. Story 15. This girl took my painting at school. I worked hard on it, but I had to accept the poor one someone else made because I forgot to put my name on it. I still hold a firm grudge. It has been 4 to 5 years, and I am still angry about it. She is still no better than she was. Story 16. The manager of the company that performed my store's inventory called me a liar when correcting his staff's miscounts. When I showed I was correct, he just walked away. No apology, nothing. I see him every year and pray for his misfortune. Story 17. And T-censored Pearl Jam's anti-war, anti-George W. Bush message during a live stream concert. This was nearly 20 years ago, and I have not forgotten. Story 18. When I was 15 and my little brother meticulously shifted all the bricks on a Lego T-34, I spent 2 weeks building by one stud wherever it was possible to. Story 19. My sister told our mother that I had a boyfriend at age 13. I got in trouble when she was going to school and having relationships with every boy she saw. She also broke up a few relationships. Story 20. An ex gave away my sizable record collection 20 years ago, and every time I think about it, I still seethe. Story 21. A cousin got caught smoking and told everyone I taught her. I have never smoked in my life and still do not. It upset me greatly. It has been 4 years, and I had not spoken to her for 3 years. Now I am cordial at best but mostly avoid her as much as possible. She definitely knows I dislike her, so it is best that we do not speak to each other. Story 22. When I offered my lip balm to a girl in my class on the playground, and she bit it. I remember you, Jessica. Story 23. I'll never forget this. I'm 36. And this happened when I was 5. I used to live in income housing growing up, so all the kids played together all the time. I had a big bucket of chalk, so I shared it with the neighborhood. My only rules were to return it, not break it on purpose, and actually use it while being cool about sharing. My mom set the rules, obviously, and I was the enforcer. One girl came over and decided to just rub the chalk into the concrete until her finger touched the ground, get another piece, and do it again. She wasn't drawing something fun, cool, or even her name. She just used the chalk until it was gone, over and over. I told her to stop and yelled that she was wasting my chalk for no reason. I ran her off and didn't share my chalk with her anymore. Years later, when I was 19 or 20, my mom worked with her at McDonald's, and I warned her not to trust that girl. Later, I found out the girl got fired for stealing people's credit cards out of their lockers in the back on camera. My mom told me and couldn't believe that after all those years of me warning people, she ended up doing things like that. I was absolutely not surprised. Story 24. A friend bailed on a Christmas dinner I organized for friends, saying she hurt her back. However, later that night, she posted pictures from a club showing that she was intoxicated. We have not spoken since. Years later, I found out she lied about something else more serious. No regrets. Story 25. I bought a used car years ago when I was in my late 20s. I mentioned to a colleague that it was a little slow and that it was not really a good fast lane car. He replied, "Well, you are not a fast lane guy." Story 26. During an argument with my mother, I turned around to face my sister and mouthed, "She is such a mean person." My sister promptly told on me, and my father slapped me so hard he dislocated my jaw. I imagine whenever she is sad, she relives that moment in her mind to cheer herself up. Story 27. When my mother died, we had a memorial service. The front row was reserved for me and my siblings. My uncle sat in the front and refused to move, saying, "I'm her brother." My brother-in-law snapped at him and said, "They're her children." He reluctantly moved to the second row, which we had reserved for him. He treated her poorly when she was alive. Story 28. A girl once told anyone who would listen that my sister was out on the playground at midnight dancing around naked. How would we get there in elementary school without adult help? B. How would she even know? None of us lived close. See, what kind of bullying lie is that? What is the point of lying to me, the sister of the supposed witch? Like I would not know she is lying and try to beat her before being pulled off by a teacher. Story 29. My cousin told my parents that I was at the club getting drunk. I was 16. Then that person called me, saying someone told my parents they were going to call me soon and pick me up because they were very angry. My parents came to the club, called me, and told me that if I did not leave, they would come in and get me out. So I left, and there was my cousin waiting to calm us all down. Years later, my mom told me that he was the one who told them. It has been 11 years now, but I am still upset. Story 30. My high school best friend told me that I used my father having cancer as an excuse to avoid giving her rides because she had no license. I was frequently helping take him 2 hours away for radiation treatment and chemotherapy. I do not care about her. Story 31. In kindergarten, the kids whisper, the kind that kids use when they cover their mouths but still are loud. When I was 5 and new to the classroom, a girl named Carolina whispered that way to the other kids, telling them not to speak to me because I must be weird since I was Chinese. I don't even remember what I did, but that wasn't cool. Story 32. Nomi, my husband, when he was in kindergarten, he needed to take a busy work activity for school. His mother grabbed his sister's coloring book. He apparently took it out when he was not supposed to, and his sister took it back. She never got over it. Remember when you lost My Lady and the Tramp coloring book? About 5 years ago, we found a Lady and the Tramp coloring book. We waited until Christmas, handed it to her and said, "Now stop complaining about that coloring book. Do I need to tell you that he was 64 and she was 70 at the time?" Story 33. My mom would make broccoli cheese soup for the family. It was my favorite dish, especially when she made it. I have tried it at many different restaurants and other people's homes, but until my girlfriend was taught to make it by my mom, no other version has come close to being as good. She made it for all of us, mainly at my request because I liked it so much. She always made a large pot, enough for our family of 5 to have a few bowls each, plus leftovers. One time, after she had made it, the leftovers were enough for just 2 bowls. She served one for me and one for my 2-year-old brother. She tended to reheat it too much for me to eat immediately, and she needed help with something in the kitchen. I went to help her while my brother began eating his soup. A few minutes later, I heard him say, I'm going to eat Sonanuva's broccoli cheese soup." I thought he was joking or trying to bug me because I didn't think he had realistically finished his bowl in such a short time. But when I went to sit down and eat mine a few minutes later, both bowls were empty. 17 years later, I still haven't forgiven him for eating the last of my favorite soup. Story 34. When I was in high school, I had plans to hang out with a guy I had a crush on. He told his friend we were going to hang out, and his friend said, "She's not even that cute. Michael, I'm 29 now, and that same guy comes into my work all the time. I can tell he thinks I'm cute now. The thing is, Michael looks like something H.P. Lovecraft would describe an Innsmouth, and I'm solidly trailer park or gas station pretty. Where did he even get off? Can you tell how petty and unforgivable this is?" Story 35. They cracked a joke about a celebrity who recently passed away. I had just told them that I had been friends with the celebrity as a teenager before they became famous. Clearly, they had not listened and were trying to come up with an edgy joke about it. Story 36. 15 years ago, I was pregnant with my son. One of my cravings was stuffing. During Thanksgiving, I was 8 months pregnant. My husband threw out the stuffing because he thought it had been left out too long. Story 37. In first grade, I completed a worksheet I had trouble with, and a kid who was mean to me for no reason squeezed his juice all over it. I went to tell the teacher, and she called me a tattletale. I still dislike both of them to this day. The worst part of the story is that whenever I told people how mean the teacher was, they either said, "She's so nice," or "You definitely deserved it." Story 38. In 2001, 18-year-old me was at a house party with a friend. We were both in conversation with a guy she had a crush on. When my jokes landed a little too well, the friend I was with blurted out, "Itzel flowers now had lice 2 weeks ago. That was a mean move." Story 39. My 6th grade language arts teacher told me I was going to fail the state standardized test and to go back and check it because I finished too quickly. I did and still finished before anyone else was done, having changed no answers. Her anger with me was so out of the realm of normal that I am still shocked by it. So I sat down and read my book until everyone else was done and turned it in, having never changed any answers, and she was still very angry at me. I made a 100, the only student in the grade to do so, but did not find out until the summer that she had lost my score. Her assessment was not unexpected. I was a lazy student, but the previous summer, I had discovered a love of reading and improved from a 5th grade reading level to a college level in just under a year. However, she still did not have to be so harsh about it. Story 40. I forgot a bottle of Ricci Ricci perfume at my ex's family home in 2012. They were in another province at the time. When I asked about it, they said it was not there. I am certain I left it there because when I returned from the trip, I did not have it. We stopped dating that same year, and it has been at least a decade since we have been in touch. However, I will always hold a grudge about that. Story 41. My oldest sister took my mother and me to court for something she had no proof of 11 years ago. She still thinks she did nothing wrong. I am still not going to forgive her or forget. Story 42. When I was about 10 or 11, my uncle thought he ripped his pants. He asked me to look from behind. I told him I didn't see any rips or holes. He said to look closer, maybe it was towards the middle. So I went closer, and when I did, he let out a loud and disgusting fart in my face. Everyone laughed. It's been more than 30 years, and even now, whenever I see him, I blow farts his way every time. Love you, Tito, but also forget you. Story 43. I went to my friend's wedding at an inconvenient time, but we had been friends for 17 years, so it was important. I spent a fortune because it was on a Monday, and we had to drive to a remote location for 3 hours after a flight. I wanted to be there for her. 6 months later, she replied no to my wedding because her husband was planning to watch his football game that day. I asked her if she would come anyway and stay at the house. I got married in my parents' backyard. It would have been a 4-hour drive and free accommodations. She said no. She did not feel comfortable leaving her husband alone for the weekend. I felt hurt and cut off all communication. I know it was not mature, but I did not understand the reasoning. Story 44. My ex-roommate and best friend always drank my beer when I went to sleep. He had his own but saved it and drank mine. I caught him one night, we got in a fight, and I kicked him out the next day. It has been over 20 years. We still have mutual friends and see each other but never speak. Story 45. This happened 6 years ago. My friend and I got different flavors of fries, and I was saving the best ones, the glorious powder-coated, flavor-blasted fries, for the end like dessert. My friend ate them, thinking I did not want them. I was fuming, so I got petty. Every day, I slightly increased her mouse sensitivity. On the last day, I set it back to normal. She genuinely thought her laptop was glitching. Revenge. Lightly seasoned. Perfectly served. I still think those might have been the best tasting fries I never got to try. Story 46. My mother was evacuated to Wales during the Second World War because of the nightly German bombing raids on London. The children at the school in Wales called her a dirty cockney. That insult still burns in her heart to this day. Story 47. In middle school, I got detention for talking in the cafeteria, and the assistant principal took my cookies and sent me away. Story 48. My cousin Zach had a game called Make Me Laugh or Die. My brother and I had to make him laugh or he would torture us. One time, he shoved my head into the dirty litter box and made me smell it for 30 seconds. Story 49. This girl in my third grade class said I had horse teeth and made a club not allowing horses to join. You suck. Autumn. Story 50. My aunt held my grandfather's birthday party on the anniversary of my mother's death. Only one person mentioned her passing. The same aunt, my mother's sister, omitted my mother from my grandfather's obituary. My mother had passed away about 20 years earlier. She was the oldest of two girls. I have more to share, but I do not want to derail the conversation. Story 51. I recently launched a law firm after I took a buyout from the federal government. I announced it on social media and received mostly praise and best wishes. Andrew gave me a care reaction and refused to elaborate. He is on my list for life. Story 52. This guy who I slept with came over to comfort me the day my dad died. We did not have sex that night, but he told me that he had told mutual friends the sex was subpar. He was not wrong. We just could not connect in that way, but had a great time flirting and hanging out. It was like, did you need to tell me the day my dad died that the sex was subpar? Story 53. Back in high school, a friend posted some very personal details about me, as well as some things that triggered me on a website. Throughout the school year, he frequently linked that website as a way to send a message and included it in his bio. Story 54. Someone who I thought was my friend, for whom I was the best man, drove more than 20 hours to go on vacation just 15 minutes from my house and never reached out to say hi. I only found out about it because his wife posted the trip on social media. We have not really spoken since. That was about 7 years ago. Story 55. My high school friend's mother called me Thunder Thighs in 1986. No, Brenda, I did not have thunder thighs at age 16 when I weighed 115 pounds. Today, on the other hand, Story 56. New student in high school said, "Move it. Overweight person." I was and still am overweight, but those were literally the first words he ever said to me. Story 57. On my first day of 8th grade at a new school, all the girls in my gym class told me I needed a makeover. I was bullied relentlessly from that point through high school. I was only 35 pounds overweight and was bullied like you wouldn't believe. We had scooter races once, and one very mean girl complained about how heavy I was the entire time when she had to push me. Then she rammed me shoulder first with full force into the brick wall. Everyone burst into laughter, including the gym teachers. Those gym teachers hated overweight kids, so I didn't get any mercy from them. I had to laugh it off even though I was fighting back tears. I also had a science teacher who fat-shamed me in front of the entire class at that same school. We were making bracelets with ultraviolet changing beads, and she singled me out and announced to the entire class that I needed to use a large elastic band to make my bracelet. Everyone in class started whispering and giggling, and I wanted to die. I developed an eating disorder my junior year going into senior year and had a transformation. After that, everyone left me alone. I will never forgive those kids and teachers who made my life a living hell. They probably all forgot about me, but I have not forgotten them. I will be stuck with those bad memories for the rest of my life. Story 58. After 7 years of being a cheerleader through junior high and high school, the night before senior basketball tryouts, the advisor told me not to get my hopes up for tomorrow because, quote, nobody likes a fat cheerleader. I was devastated, did not show for the tryouts, and am still traumatized today. Story 59. I still haven't forgiven this girl from grade 4 who told me she was going to borrow my special limited edition Pikachu Pokemon Yellow Game Boy Color with the Pokemon Yellow game card. She basically stole it. She took it from me on the special bus, said she was borrowing it without my permission, and I was too nice to take it back. She was a bully and very large, and I never saw it again. If you read this and it was you, you are still a terrible person in my story. Story 60. I used to work at a gas station long ago. There was a guy who was otherwise very nice, always smiling, helpful, and kind. In front of customers, he pretended to be the boss and always tried to tell me good job and interfered in things he did not understand, but only when customers were present. You could employ people like that for customer service because they treat customers well since they seek attention, but never in a senior position. Story 61. I can't recall my exact age, but I was a teenager. It was a hot summer day, and there was no school. I was walking up the street from my house with nothing to do. I saw none of the other kids in the neighborhood out playing as they usually do. Then I heard noises of kids playing. I followed the noise, which took me up the driveway to the backyard of one of the kids' houses. Almost every single kid in the neighborhood was there, playing, swimming, and splashing, just having a fine old time. After a minute or so of watching them play in the pool, the kid whose pool and backyard it was came out of the pool and approached me. He pretty much asked me to leave, telling me I was making everyone feel uncomfortable by standing there watching them play. I looked past him, over his shoulder at the kids in the pool. They were laughing, jumping, and splashing. They didn't seem uncomfortable with me standing there. They didn't even seem to notice me at all. It was clear that the only kid I was making uncomfortable was the one who owned the pool and was asking me to leave. Maybe he felt some guilt about how I was the only kid in the neighborhood he didn't invite into his pool, but not enough guilt to change his mind and extend an invitation. He didn't gruffly or angrily order me to leave. Rather, he was very businesslike and incredibly polite in the way he worded his request. I, in turn, also pretended to be very businesslike and polite when I acceded to his request. I said, "Oh yeah, sure, absolutely, no problem whatsoever," and pretended his request rolled off my back. Then I turned around and made the trek from his backyard back to the street. As I was walking down the driveway, I silently thought, "You inconsiderate person. You couldn't have the common decency to invite me into your pool? You invite all the kids in the neighborhood except for me? Out of all the kids in your backyard, I'm the one you asked to leave. Today, that same kid is a real estate agent in Arizona. If I ever want to buy real estate in Arizona, and my brother and I are indeed looking at investing in Arizona real estate in the future, guess who and whose agency I will never do business with?" Story 62. 40 years ago, I was a newly graduated software engineer at a small company, working with two experienced software engineers on one of the company's two flagship hardware and software devices. 2 months after joining this team, the other two engineers left the company, and the product became mine. For months after that, I implemented major features, cleaned up a lot of truly awful code, and removed many bugs left behind by my two predecessors. The decision to release beta versions to our most favored sales outlet and their main salesperson for our products was above my pay grade, but he did receive them each time with additional new features, increased polish and performance, and, of course, fewer bugs. Eventually, the product was ready to be demonstrated at a trade show, and that salesperson came by the office to pick up the new version and also to meet me, the lead and only software engineer on that product. His first words to me were, "So you're the person who ruined the product. After 40 years, I have never forgiven, and I will never forget." Story 63. Not me, but I overwrote my cousin's Pokemon Red save on the Game Boy with my own save that I had barely even progressed in. He still reminds me of it every now and then. He jokes about it, but I think he is still a little bit mad at me because of it. This was more than 25 years ago. Story 64. I have an ex-best friend who was absolutely convinced that I stole her iPod. I had borrowed it a few times during our friendship, as her house was close to the park where I ran, and the cell service there was terrible. I always returned it as soon as I was done running. About 1 year after we stopped talking, she messaged me about the item. I did not have it, I had not borrowed it for 2 years at that point, and I basically told her to leave me alone. It is dumb and irritating that it bothers me as much as it does, but I know she found it after harassing me and did not say anything. Story 65. When I was a competitive figure skater, a peer's father told me I was not good enough to compete. I beat his daughter in my first competition. It still surprises me that he said something like that to a young child. Story 66. My sister and I were reading a book at the same time and talking about it. The motion picture was coming out a few weeks later and we planned to go see it together. She ended up going with our cousin. I still will not watch the motion picture. Story 67. Some kid in primary school took this tiny little bear I had, about 1.5 centimeters big, and threw it in the wood chips at school. I never found it again. I am still so upset. I am 31 years old. Story 68. I was saving the red gum for last from my Fruit Stripe pack of gum. It was my favorite flavor. My mom got to it before I did. The same thing happened with the Samoa Girl Scout cookies I bought and had her pick up. I never got my cookies. It's the small joys in life. Story 69. My former best friend spent an entire gathering complaining about how exhausted she was after recently returning to work from a leave of absence. She kept saying her body needed 9 hours of sleep. I was there with my barely 2-month-old, exclusively pumping, and had to drive to her house instead of the other way around. I had gotten maybe 5 hours of sleep spread out over the entire previous day. When I said I was exhausted too, she immediately redirected the conversation back to herself. It ended our friendship, and I am still angry 2 years later. Story 70. For some reason, women at a pharmacy where I worked about 8 years ago always had something mean to say to me. The ones that stuck with me. Sana called me chubby. The lady in the dispensary said my pink hair washed me out. When I got engaged, my manager mentioned it in the storeroom. Zainaya turned around with a shocking look on her face and said, "You got engaged?" My reaction to all of them was neutral. Funny thing is, 1. I have always been thin. The dispensary lady always looked washed out because she was very pale with platinum blonde hair. Zainaya is still single. It was just projection and jealousy, but they can all kiss my ass. Story 71. I was an awkward third-grade girl who wanted to play basketball. We were shooting free throws and I couldn't hit one. The parent coach had the entire group of third-grade girls chanting "weenie arms" while I was trying to shoot free throws. I still strongly dislike her. She's still in our hometown, and I won't even let my kids take candy from her at the trunk or treat. I grew up to be a 6-foot-tall band kid because I never wanted to play sports again. When people ask me why I didn't play, I always said, "Ask Sandy." Story 72. When I was a kid, my family was poor and we did not have a car. My cousin was always making fun of me and my sister, saying, "Oh my God, you guys still do not have a car. Let us call her Karen." That was about 20 years ago. Karen, you are still unpleasant. Story 73. I went to a sleepover at Rebecca's house in 2nd grade, and then they decided I was not invited, so they made me leave. I hope she is suffering now. 30+ years of hating her. Story 74. Dana told me I had weird eyelids in year 12. I will never forget. I think about it every time I do my eyeshadow. Story 75. In Boy Scouts, we had to carve an animal out of soap. I wanted to carve an ant. My troop leader would not let me because she said ants are not animals. Ants are obviously animals, and I will never forgive this injustice. Story 76. My neighbor constantly parks his car on the street in front of my house. About 5 feet of his car crosses over my property line. He is free to park anywhere on that public road, but it still bothers me for some reason. I will never mention this to him. I will continue to be friendly, but I will judge him for it until one of us dies. Story 77. I didn't have a lot of money in the family growing up, so when I got toys for Christmas and my birthday, or occasionally if my family could afford it, I was very happy and careful. I had a friend, and I use the term loosely. She was a demon, always hurting and bullying me. The only reason we were around each other was because our mothers were friends. I had a doll and she begged to take it home with her. I had one of hers for a few days. I didn't want to, but our parents made us do it to stop her from being upset. When they left, I noticed her doll was extremely worn, so I didn't really want to play with it. But she had left it on the floor, so I moved it once and the doll's head fell off. I'm sure she and her mother knew it was broken and wanted mine. My mother was angry with me about it, and when my friend came, I was instantly accused of breaking it deliberately. So my mother, to smooth things over, made me give my doll to my so-called friend. I was heartbroken. My mother later regretted it and eventually bought me a new one, but I never forgave any of them. Story 78. I am a server and I love pens. Guests who take my pens are monsters. I will never forgive you even though you only get the cheap pens to use. Just know, I forever wish you a tiny rock in your sock. Story 79. Mrs. Tucker, my second grade teacher. My dog Shy passed away. I was sad and crying at recess. Mrs. Tucker walked up and unprompted told me, "Get over it. It's just a dog." That was when the only dog I had ever known and loved so dearly passed away. It had not even been 48 hours since her death. The heartbreak and pain were so real. I loved Shy and she loved me. No forgiveness will ever be given. Mrs. Tucker, you are a bad person and deserve contempt and disrespect. Story 80. My enduring quest for a $20 bet from a fourth grade delinquent. Ah, Brent. The name still evokes a certain fond exasperation. Back in fourth grade, we made a $20 bet. I would go to a 1989 World Series game. Even an earthquake could not stop me. Upon my triumphant return, I sought my rightful winnings. But Brent, already cultivating his lifelong commitment to being a weasel, claimed I was joking. The nerve. 15 years later, I ran into him and naturally inquired about my long overdue bounty. What did I get? A stammering symphony of excuses, the classic, "I do not know what you are talking about." Oh, he knew. He was just too spineless to admit he was, and always would be, a punk who reneged on a bet. So here is to you, Brent. May your coffee always be cold, your socks perpetually damp, and your integrity remain as elusive as my $20. I truly hope you continue to be a shining example of everything a person should not be for the rest of your days. You earned it. Story 81. I was 7 or 8 years old, in the last year of infant school in the United Kingdom. We had to do a project on an A3 piece of paper about our favorite animal. Elephant had been chosen by someone else, so I went for my second favorite, the duck-billed platypus. I was told that I was not allowed to choose it because I would not find enough information. I ended up doing mine on the panda. Beth wrote a detailed booklet on the platypus. The headmistress came to the classroom to congratulate her. I do not understand why more than one child could not do the same animal. What still upsets me is Miss Gledhill lying to me about finding enough information. I am 50 years old, and it still makes me sad. Story 82. This happened over a decade ago in college, but I think about it at least monthly. I was having a nice talk with my friends at dinner, laughing and catching up on the day. Then Cassie, a friend of a friend, looked me dead in the face and said, "You are the most awkward person I've ever met." I was shocked. At least I didn't cheat with my best friend's fiancé. Story 83. A girl in kindergarten told me it was annoying how I always tried to act smart. My crime was using a word she did not know. Back then, she was mean to pretty much everyone except 1 or 2 girls, but as we got older, she seemed to adjust and we never had any other real interactions. But that was uncalled for. Story 84. Some condescending person in my digital art history class in college challenged me with an egocentric question during my end-of-semester presentation. I really struggled in that class for some reason, and this was my last effort before it was over. I was very upset at this individual. How dare they try to trick me up? You have nothing tangible to gain from this moment. Just let me be so I can get my grade and move on. Story 85. My mom was overweight at the time, and my sister's best friend was maybe 7 or 8 years old. However, she told my mom she was not allowed on the balance beam at mother-daughter gymnastics night because she was too heavy. It was the first time I ever saw my mom cry, and I never forgave that little girl for it. Story 86. Amy, my supposed friend. We were at Westminster Mall. I liked a tank top, and she said, "You can't wear that because you have no breasts." That was just one example. She was mean regularly. It is unfortunate that she got breast cancer in her 40s. She was never a real friend. She defines frenemy. Amy, you suck. Story 87. I was on sick leave and receiving a subsidy, and my former friend's husband said, So that's where my tax dollars go, in front of her. They can go away. Story 88. I was about 11 and in middle school we had to make a diorama. I made a teepee and sewed it double-skinned out of calico, made a bamboo frame, and drew authentic decorations on it. I got points deducted because the teacher thought an 11-year-old boy wouldn't sew that well and assumed my mother had done it, whereas my mother had actually taught me to sew. Story 89. According to my siblings, it is my abusive mother telling me that she wanted me to succeed at suicide as a child. I cannot forgive her for something so small and petty, but I will stand firm on this. Story 90. I made the mistake of telling a random student in high school that I had a crush on a girl in class. He, of course, told everyone. I occasionally see him on social media, and I am still annoyed by his face. Story 91. My ex said she was getting sober to better herself and the relationship, only for me to find out she would wait until I fell asleep to go meet her drug dealer. That still affects me deeply. Story 92. Several years ago, my husband mentioned he liked the texture of someone else's homemade chocolate chip cookies better than mine. Over the next few weeks, I baked dozens of batches of chocolate chip cookies, perfecting the recipe until he finally admitted I had it perfect. I have not baked them since. Story 93. In 7th grade, my best friend and his family were planning a trip to Mexico. His older sister couldn't go, so they offered me her spot. I asked my dad, and he asked about my school grades. I was passing everything except math or reading. I can't remember which. Due to that one failing class, I couldn't go on this free, all-expenses-paid trip to Mexico. That was about 17 years ago, and I'm still bitter about it. The best part? The little girl who was the best friend of my friend's little sister took my spot, complained, and ruined the entire trip. I'm sure they still had fun, but she was the worst part of the whole experience, according to everyone, including the little sister. Story 94. On my 21st birthday, I turned around in the pub and saw my ex licking a devil tattoo on a so-called friend's back. He claimed it was to see if it was real. It broke my heart in two. Story 95. I knocked on a door and was told to come in. When I opened the door, I saw a homemade .22 caliber pistol pointed at my face. Story 96. I once went through a Wendy's drive-thru and asked for extra barbecue sauce. They even charged me for it. Big surprise when I got home, they didn't put it in the bag. I will never get over it. I hope something similar happens to them so they feel my pain. Story 97. A family friend deleted the photos I took of boats on the water before a storm on my family's camera to take pictures of her children. It was probably 18 years ago, but I am still pretty annoyed about it. Story 98. Helped someone during a mathematics test secretly because he was crying, aged around 10 to 11, and got my paper canceled for copied answers. Story 99. When I was pregnant, I bought some ice cream from Baskin-Robbins to eat. Later, maybe a day after, I went to get it and my ex had eaten nearly the entire 14-ounce carton, except for a spoonful or two on the bottom edge. I would have definitely shared with him, no question. I spoiled him more than he probably deserved, so for him to eat all of it except a tiny bit was an insult. Anyone who eats my food that I saved and was looking forward to eating is on my bad list for a while. But if you eat nearly all of it, leave only a minuscule amount, and put it back in the fridge like it's still full, that is extremely disrespectful. You might as well eat that last bite. I would be less upset if I saw the container in the trash than to find it in the freezer, excited to eat it, only to open it and see a tiny morsel left. It's a slap in the face. I got my hopes up, only to have them destroyed by that one tiny bite left. It's cruel. Story 100. I grew up in a small town in Scotland. We had a yearly festival when all kids were involved and assigned a costume. When you reached the year before high school, it was very fancy and they crowned an 11 or 12-year-old queen of the town. They had a court with maids dressed up for the girls and roles for the boys. Imagine medieval times. My friend and I were not chosen to be part of it. They held a big parade through the town where 4 kids who were considered the best had to provide ice cream at home. Doesn't it sound strange? Well, my friend and I were happy for 3 of our friends, the queen and 2 of the 6 maids. The others were from other local schools. We asked to see Natalie, who was one of our best friends, a girl whose house we visited often. A man told us we weren't special, so we couldn't see her. He was probably in his 40s, and this was his once-a-year job. I will never forgive him. It was such a huge deal in our town. We were told our friends were special, and we were not. Imagine being told you are not special by a sneering man when you are 11. For what it's worth, we were told later that our teacher fought for us. Her own daughter got a place, but she fought for the two of us. I came from a struggling single-parent family. My mother was a dinner lady, and we lived in a council house. The head of my school was a snob and would never have chosen someone like me. The next year, several more girls were included, and we know it was because our teacher made a fuss. 2 years later, a family friend was queen. She was from a council house and the same school. Nearly 20 years later, the extra girls get their place every year. Story 101. My brother drank a special bottle of wine from Australia that I was holding on to. Now I do not know what the winery was called or anything. It is disappointing. Story 102. My mother gave my scooter away when I was at my father's for the weekend as a child. I do not recall much about it at the time, but I teased her about it for years afterwards. When I had my own children, she bought me a new adult-sized scooter. Story 103. I had my first girlfriend when I was 14, and we had plans to spend Valentine's Day together watching anime and drinking hot chocolate. My mom made us both shovel snow, and by the time we were done, her parents had come to pick her up. Now, whenever she asks what my Valentine's Day plans are, I tell her I do not know. I was thinking of cleaning the basement this time. Story 104. My older brothers used to break everything I had that was nice or brand new that was not given to me by my parents. I won a beautiful ceramic piggy bank in a class raffle given to me by my first grade teacher, and the next day after bringing it home, I caught my brothers shattering it in the living room, laughing. The next year, I won one of those comically large pencils and brought it home. My brothers borrowed it and snapped it in half immediately. Things like that kept happening until high school, and every time it was just an accident. I strongly dislike my brothers. Story 105. 6th grade, 1997. Last day of school. My world studies teacher, MS. Meter, was telling everyone their final grade in her class. She went up to me and my friend Rohit and said, "You and Rohit, I don't know how you both did it, but you both got A's." That shocked me because I knew I didn't do a work in her class. But if my world studies teacher told me I got an A, I was going to assume that I got an A. I got my report card a couple of weeks later. I did not get an A. I got a C. Even if I wanted to complain, she took a job in Hawaii, so I really couldn't complain. Still upset. I will never not be upset. Don't raise the hopes of an 11-year-old for no reason. Story 106. When my ex and I announced our engagement, we were 23 at the time. A female friend of his asked if I was pregnant. She was so condescending and passive-aggressive. I will never let it go, and we are divorced now. Story 107. When going camping with friends over the years, they rented a small cabin instead of a tent. They said they had higher standards. Story 108. My former stepfather gave me a hard time for coming home with Crocs that my grandmother got me while I was with her. A month later, he got my sister and mother Crocs and never said a word. Story 109. In 1st grade, Jason had already gotten me into trouble once. He stood behind me in line and smacked me on the behind. I turned around and slapped him. We both got sent to the principal's office. Then I scraped my knees on the playground. I was trying not to cry while I looked down at the blood trickling down. My knees were hurting and it looked scary. Jason told me I had to lick the blood to save it, or I would not have enough. I got scared and licked it. It made me gag and throw up. I started crying while he was loudly laughing. He then told everyone I was a crybaby. I hate that Jason was so mean. I hope he fell and scraped up his own knees when no one was there with a bandage. Thanks a bunch for sticking around till the end of the video. Remember to subscribe, and until next time, stay awesome and goodbye.